Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Linda Jefferson. I am a librarian here at the Rogers Public Library. We're so glad you're here. These programs go on every second Tuesday of the month, and I passed out what we're having next month, Waterfalls in the Ozarks. It's February 13th. So bring lunch, we'll have you a dessert, and we'll get to listen to Flip. Today, we are so excited to have Rachel here. She made it here from Shiloh, the Shiloh Museum in Springdale. She's going to tell us about Hollywood and the Ozarks. So welcome, Rachel. We're glad to have you.
I am Rachel Whitaker. I am the historian at Shiloh Museum. That's kind of a catch-all title, actually, because I don't want all those slashes that everybody else has for all the hats that they wear at the museum. So part of my job is doing research in Northwest Arkansas, and we cover 6 counties at our museum: Benton, Boone, Madison, Newton, Carroll, and Washington. And so we answer research requests about your genealogy, local history, building histories, different things like that. And sometimes we just get weird random things that I'm just nosy enough by nature that I want to know the answer to, so I'll help you find the answers. So I do have a degree in history, and I have a degree in library science, so I'm super nosy, especially about dead people. So we have a lot going on at Shiloh, so I'd probably recommend checking out our social media or our webpage to kind of keep up with what we're doing. I'm in and out all the time. Doing programs, that's the second part of my job. So what I'm doing today, sometimes it's a research request that we're like, hey, this is really cool, everybody needs to know about that. And so it turns into a program. The third part of my job is I do digitization for the museum. So we have a relatively new department that's digitizing our collections. I do our coding and our metadata for our digitization department. So I get to wear a lot of hats. I get to do a lot of different things. I'm a little ADHD, so it's kind of perfect. So I get to do a little bit of everything. But we have coming up here in the next few weeks, we'll have a new exhibit in our temporary gallery on Ozark coverlets. It's the anniversary of the Weavers Guild. I think 75th, it could be their 50th, don't hold me to any of that. And then later in the year, we're going to have a temporary exhibit on the Mosaic Templars and African Americans in Arkansas. So, so kind of keep track of us on our social media and our webpage to know what we're up to. But everybody's got a story, right? Are you guys all native to Northwest Arkansas? No. Oh my goodness, this is my first time to have that kind of a crowd. So I am native. I was born and raised here. I went to Oklahoma whenever I started college, and I came back. So in the 1990s, they did a film here a miniseries called The Blue and the Gray. And everybody got involved. Everybody in Northwest Arkansas, almost everybody has a blue and the gray story, and we'll get into those here in a little bit. But as a historian, I like to contextualize everything. So we're going to back up a little bit outside of the Ozarks, kind of look at the big picture, and then we'll narrow in on what happens here in Northwest Arkansas. So in recent years, the pandemic shut down the cinemas, it shut down a lot of the production companies, and so I haven't seen as many films in the last few years as what we may have before. And it also kind of seems like there's fewer being put out to me, but that may be because I'm in grad school and I feel like I live in a cave half the time. So the production of entertainment has been slowed. Crews have been, on all kinds of restrictions. And in the past few years, many of the greats have passed on. I will admit that popular culture after 1968, I don't have a clue. So for me, there's not a whole lot left in Hollywood to watch. I'm having to find new and younger actors. But we've lost Sean Connery, Chadwick Boseman, Wilford Brimley, Brian Dennehy, Kirk Douglas, Ian Holm, Betty White, Peter Scolari, Olympia Dukakis, Christopher Plummer, and then we also lost Sidney Poitier, and then in more recent years we've lost even more of those. And I don't know about you guys, but if Sam Elliott, Tom Selleck, and Clint Eastwood go, I don't know what I'm gonna watch. There's just not a whole lot else out there for me. So In the US, we also have this cult of celebrity that follows these actors with avid curiosity, invading their privacy, and tabloids and reporters comment on their lives as if they are intimate friends who have the right to pass judgment rather than just admiring their talent for a job well done. So that's a uniquely American thing. They don't do that in other countries in the West. They do in Asia, but not here so much. We use cinema as a social commentary and as an escape from social ills and our own personal tragedies. We use it as a way to connect with others and also as a way to try and make sense of the world around us. More importantly, what we watch is as unique as our own personalities. Today we're going to talk about Hollywood coming to the Ozarks specifically, and I promise, like those tabloids, I will offer up some juicy gossip. But first, let's take a brief look at the history of the cinema. The very first moving pictures were produced by the Edison Company. Their device was patented in 1891 and was called the kinetoscope. You can see a picture of it up there. It allowed for one person at a time to view a moving picture and was first demonstrated in 1893. In 1895, the Lumiere brothers of France produced the first projected films, and their device was called the cinematograph. You can see that one there as well. We actually have a cinematograph in our collection at Shiloh. These early films, whether on the kinetoscope or on the cinematograph, were generally only a few minutes long. Early color films were hand-tinted, and in 1932, we get our first full-length feature film in color. It was actually Technicolor. Does anybody want to guess what that first full-length feature film in color was?
Snow White?
Gone with the Wind, exactly. In 1939, we get a second major production in the US in color, Wizard of Oz. In the 1940s, the British would release their first full-color film. But what about sound? Does anybody know what the first official talkie was?
Yes.
Yep. In 1927, the Jazz Singer was released. This used synchronized sound created by the film and a separate audio recording to be played simultaneously. But this was unreliable, and in a few years they had replaced it with movie tone, which recorded both audio and video at the same time. The heyday of cinema arrived on the eve of the Second World War. Big movie houses were built that were almost as ornate as stage theaters. I don't know if you guys have been to Tulsa on Sheridan and 21st. There's an old 1920s, very Art Deco theater that still exists, and it's kind of like stepping back into time. Hollywood became something very glamorous in this time period, but the films coming out of Hollywood were gritty and filled with gangsters and violence. Matinees in the theaters included cartoons, which were for adults, not for children, and newsreels for anyone to see. There were also often special showings in the movie houses for informational films, especially about the war and how to protect the soldiers abroad or how to ration properly. And in fact, in 1947 in Springdale, they had an airing of a specific film just for information about how to go about your business during the wartime. I'm not sure what war they were doing in 47 or if we're on the verge of the Cold War or Korea at that point, but they were already putting out propaganda films then, full-length ones. In 1942, as Americans became embroiled in the war in Europe, they wanted to sell their films abroad. But if that kind of film with the gangsters and the violence and the speakeasies and all of that was being produced, what did that say about America? Was that the image that they wanted to present abroad? It really wasn't. So the Office of War Information was formed, and also its subdepartment, the Bureau of Motion Pictures, to control the publicity. The World War II Museum focuses on the propaganda going out to foreign countries, but there are also two books. Ben Irwin's The Collaboration, Hollywood's Pact with Hitler, and Thomas Doherty's Hollywood and Hitler, 1933 to 1939. The Dohertys suggest that the propaganda war was also fought here at home. Erwand suggests that Hitler dictated what sorts of standards were placed on films here. So we couldn't make fun of the Nazis. Moral and racial restrictions were dictated by what the Nazi film censors would allow to be imported into German territories. Nazis depicted in the film could not be villains or buffoons if we were going to sell a film to a German territory. And think about during World War II how much territory in Europe that actually is. No depictions of their war crimes were allowed, so we couldn't talk about the Holocaust and the ghettos, even though we really did know about them at that point. And by making the films more palatable to Nazi Germans, the message was also transmitted to the US consumer. So that Nazi propaganda kind of filtered back over here a little bit. Not everyone was on board with the US involvement in the war effort in Europe and the Pacific, yes, after Pearl Harbor. But in Europe, there were still people who agreed with the Nazi message in the US up to that point. So they didn't see a problem with this. Conversely, Doherty's perspective is that the unusually large number of Jewish executives in Hollywood were pushing their own agenda in films and would do the exact opposite, depicting German Nazis as buffoons more often than villains. They hoped that through their propaganda they could influence the public, who would then pressure the US government to intercede on behalf of the Jews in Europe. So you have two things going on in Hollywood at one time that are kind of in competition. The use of film as propaganda would continue into the Cold War and on into the present. The James Bond films are especially great for gauging who the Americans and the British think are their enemies at any given moment in history. When you watch an action film or a war film, watch to see who the enemy is, especially in the 007 movies. It's kind of fun to watch over time if you start with Sean Connery and you work your way up to Daniel Craig. Art house films also use some of these methods to share a civilian message. What is wrong with society is usually a key issue, but also can be a global commentary on climate change, imperialism, and more recently, the Me Too movement. So now that I've depressed you guys like really badly, how about some of the more fun stuff, right? So I asked the following to guide my research into this topic. What is the Hollywood connection to the Ozarks? Why did Hollywood come to the Ozarks? What do they do while they're here? And what impact does it have on the region? What was shot here? So what films do we have or TV programs that were shot here? Some of the reasons given in the interviews is the untouched aspect of the Ozarks. While this might seem like it feeds into the isolated Ozarks mythology, it really is more a reflection on the preservation of our downtown areas and the original architecture of what Middle America would remember their downtowns looking like. More importantly, we used to offer 5% back on everything you spend. So that was a big draw to the Hollywood companies to come here. We'd give you 5% back. If you spent over $200,000 in the region, now we offer 20% back, so an even bigger draw to the area. If you film in Eureka Springs, you can get another 2% back on anything you spend over $250,000 in Eureka. So you get that 20% back, you get another 2% if you spend it in Eureka. Man, you're almost making your movie for free at that point. So there might be a little bit of money to incentivize your visit to our great, beautiful region. The Northwest Arkansas Film Commission was formed in the 1980s to encourage local film production, and in 1989 provided a service directory that included lists of resources like advertising agencies, computer graphics, hot air balloons, helicopters, and in case you had an accident on set, hospitals, lawyers, and other necessary people like camera operators. So they wanted you to hire local. In 1982, the Motion Picture Association formed with Lee Zachary of the Springdale Chamber of Commerce at its helm. While the organization dissolved in the 1990s or early 2000s, it was responsible for getting Hollywood crews here for films like Man Outside, Past the Alum, and Frank and Jesse. They offered a free viewing of The Blue and the Gray to promote the organization and spent time in Hollywood at conventions promoting the beauty and offerings of Northwest Arkansas. Many of the crews eat, rent hotel rooms, and engage with local businesses, but they can also cause problems when they come to town. We'll discuss individual instances as we discuss the different movies. But not all of our connections with Hollywood are with film productions itself. We also have several film festivals here in the area. Bentonville's is probably the best known because of its star-studded sponsorship. Funnily enough, the original festival was hosted in 2015, and Bentonville didn't have any movie theaters in the town at the time. The purpose of the festival was to address the unconscious bias in the movie industry, specifically the underrepresentation of women, people of color, and other minority groups such as non-binary, neuroatypical, and disabled peoples. Gina Davis and her organization, which had partnered with Walmart to host the film festival, wanted children to see themselves on the screen, but also behind the scenes as well. The first year was a little bit rocky with critics and very limited returns on their investment. The first year brought in about $300,000 or $400,000, depending on what you look at, and about 50,000 people. So it's not a whole lot of money for as many people as it brought in. It has grown, of course, and the offerings have become much more diverse. Fayetteville, Rogers, and Eureka Springs also offer film festivals. Rogers Film Festival began as an anniversary event for the local museum in the 1970s. It doesn't happen every year. It's not an annual thing like the one in Bentonville, but it does happen periodically. They offer short films, and last year, so it would have been in 2021, a film festival on sustainable living. Eureka's Film Festival is all about the indie movie. Film industry also pumps a lot of revenue back into the region. We've talked about the film festivals, but The Blue and the Gray, A Soldier's Story, A Man Outside, and Pass the Ammo, according to the Springdale News in 1987, brought $11 million to Northwest Arkansas. That's almost $27 million in today's money with inflation. The movie Jesse James actually saved McDonald County, Missouri when it was still struggling with drought and depression in 1938. And the movie The War Room chose a local company to produce their movie-related merchandise. Vic Kennett, CEO of Caruso Label out of Berryville, informed reporters back in 2015 that he would be producing the merchandise for that movie. The movie industry also gives local people a chance to shine. Does anybody want to guess who this lady is? Her name is Lisa Blount. She was born in Fayetteville, and she performed in An Officer and a Gentleman. I've seen it once, so I couldn't tell you who she plays, but I do know she's in it. This one's a little more recent. This is Lee Isaac Chung. The autobiography Minari was based on his life growing up in Lincoln, Arkansas. And the film was actually filmed in Northeast Oklahoma, but it's about the Korean-American experience in Northwest Arkansas. It is. It's really good. I finally got to see it not too long ago. This guy's more local to you guys. This is Dr. David Evans. He, by day, is a Bentonville optometrist, and his side job is directing films. He directed the movie Grace Card, which was an inspirational film, or faith-based. This one, most of you guys are going to wish you knew who it was if you don't know who it is, or you're going to recognize some of his work. This is Louis Lighton. He was raised in Fayetteville, was a U of A graduate. He was a screenwriter who wrote some pretty noteworthy films you just might have heard, including, but not limited to, Wings in 1927, Captains Courageous in 1937, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn in 1945, and my favorite, Anna and the King of Siam, 1946. This is Charlie West Chapel. I think they've corrected me on this a couple of times. I called him Chappelle for a while, and they told me it's Chapel. He is a Berryville native, and he played a part in the movie The Kid, which came out during the pandemic. So some of y'all may have missed it. I certainly missed it. This one is Donald Harrington. He's from Fayetteville, and he wrote the book that became the movie The Return. So this is a list. I went through all of the newspapers. I went through all of the clippings that we had, and sat on Emmett Avenue and watched people filming stuff, and then I worked with HBO's True Detective people when they came to do research. And so this is a list of films, the year it was released, and then the locations you might recognize. So Kidnapper's Foil, I'll actually show you part of that here in a little bit, was filmed in Fayetteville, Bentonville, and Springdale. Jesse James was filmed at the Frisco Depot in Southwest City. Wonder Valley was the first film ever produced in Arkansas, entirely in Arkansas. It's been lost to time, but we have stills at the museum. It was filmed in 1953, and for us, it was filmed mostly in Rogers, Springdale, and Cave Springs around Lake Keith. It's Alive was filmed in Eureka Springs. Smoke in the Wind was in Winslow. Fighting Mad was filmed outside the Swinging Door. It's now like some kind of weird rave nightclub now, on Dixon Street in Fayetteville. Let me see. Blue and the Gray was filmed all over Northwest Arkansas. Man Outside was filmed in Fayetteville and Johnson. Pass the Ammo was filmed in Eureka Springs and a lot of places in Carroll County. Evening Shade, the TV show, that opening scene when they do their theme song, a lot of those scenes came from Fayetteville Square. They came here to shoot the B-roll. Some of these are going to be faith-based films, but there's some really great B movies, sci-fi movies on here that you can watch on YouTube. Martin Lawrence's latest film was filmed on Emmett Avenue. We watched him do it. They cleared the street and they kept setting off charges, so we would hear the explosions on Emmett, and then they'd reset and then they'd set off more of them. So Northwest Arkansas has seen a lot over the years of Hollywood coming. So now we're going to get into the particular films.
Rachel,
Yes.
did Will Rogers ever film here?
I don't think he filmed here. He came here a lot because his wife's family was from here, but I don't think they filmed here. Funny enough, my roommate in grad school, her grandparents were the chuck wagon cooks for Will Rogers' film production. So I have a weirder connection to that than Northwest Arkansas, but as far as I know, they didn't actually film here. They just came to visit her family. So Biloxi Blues was actually filmed at Fort Chaffee, but it does have a connection to Pea Ridge, Arkansas. So Rex Putman of Pea Ridge wanted his cars in a movie. He didn't much care if he was in the pics, but he sure wanted his cars to be the stars. Last weekend, he got his desire. Friday, he loaded up 4 of his antique cars that he had built himself from the ground up and headed for Van Buren, where Biloxi Blues was being filmed. Besides his wife, Ada, daughters Joyce and Joanne, the group included Rex's 2 brothers, Faye and Jerry, and Joanne's husband, Charles Boggs. The movie, a version of Neil Simon's hit Broadway play, depicts a young man going through the Army boot camp during World War II in the early 1940s. The shooting by Universal Studios was scheduled for early Saturday morning, and the Putmans arrived on the set at 5 a.m., ready to go. And the director took one look at them, sent Rex and Jerry for a 1940s haircut, short with no sideburns. Jerry doesn't remember ever getting a haircut at 6 a.m. before. They were then sent to wardrobe. They were allowed to wear their own shirts since they were not red or white, but they had to unbutton the top 2 buttons and roll up their sleeve cuffs. Rex had to remove his hat, and the women were out of luck. They had the wrong hairstyles. So they joined the throng of spectators gripped with Hollywood fever, and Joanne and Ada sneaked into the set to rest on one of the cars, but then were chased off the set. So that's our Northwest Arkansas connection with Hollywood Blues, or Biloxi Blues, sorry. This one, I'm actually going to show you. We have a copy of the Bentonville, Fayetteville, and Springdale's films, but the Rogers The Massey Hotel is where they filmed the talent show portion of all three films. So that's what Roger's connection is with it.
Look, that's Betty Davis over there giving that party. Her old man would pay big dough for her.
Let's stay around this party so then we'll grab her.
All right, we'll make a cleanup on this. Come on, let's hide.
We sure enjoyed the show, Gene. Yes, we surely did. Well, thank you, and I'll be seeing you later. Goodbye. Bye.
Look out. That's Betty's sister. We've got to watch her. Okay, you get the car started and I'll grab her.
All right.
Goodbye, I'll come back again. Help! 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 Oh, Betty, Betty, my little sister's been Daddy!
What's the matter, Dean? What's wrong?
Daddy's been kidnapped!
Kidnapped?
Yes, she was standing right over there, and the man grabbed her, put her in her car, and drove off with her. She was screaming for help.
What do you look like?
I don't know. I didn't get to see his face.
Well, let's go call the police.
Hi, gang. Hi. Sit down. Listen to this, gang. Betty Davis has been kidnapped. Betty Davis? I know her. Slow down. What does it say, Butch? It says she was kidnapped yesterday after a birthday party, and her father's offering $1,000 reward for any information leading to the capture of the kidnappers. $1,000? Gee whiz, that's a lot of dough. I'll say. Boy, what could we do with $1,000? What could we do with it? Well, we could have a swell party with presents and everything. I'll say we could. I'll tell you what else do, gang. Let's try to find them kidnappers, and maybe we'll get that $1,000. That's a good idea. I don't want no kidnapper. Don't be afraid. They won't hurt you. My mother didn't raise no crazy children. Can I go too? Nah, you're too little. You might get hurt. Come on, gang. Let's get going. Yeah. Stop too little, and I'll show you how to get my guy and find the kidnapper too. would hate to be kidnapped. So would I. Woo! Here comes Butch and his gang. I wonder where they're going. Hey, Butch, where you fellas going?
We're looking for the kidnappers. Got Betty Davis.
Oh, boy, can we go too? No, you'd cram everything. Oh, is that so?
Yeah, we don't want any sissies in this gang.
Aw, you fellas couldn't catch kidnappers anyway.
Well, we'll show you about that if we find them.
Well, if you found them, you wouldn't do anything but run. We can run just as fast as you can.
Hey, you, Smarty.
Oh, come on, let us go. That's what I say. We never have any fun. We might help you catch them if you'd let us go.
Well, what do you say, gang? Should we let them go?
I guess so if they'll stay out of the way.
Well, come on.
Gee, I'm tired and hungry. I am too. I could eat most anything. I bet Betty's hungry too. I bet those kidnappers won't really have fun. How about one guy to kidnap me? Yeah, I bet you wouldn't. If we don't hurry, Butch and his gang will find him first. Let's get going. What are we waiting on? Why, Jack, what are you going to do with your father reward money if we get it? I'm going to buy me a Ford V8 and yippee-yi-oh-ki-yay. I'm going to buy me a horse and saddle and yippee-yi-oh-ki-yay. What are you going to do with your father reward money, Bill? Well, I think I'll buy me a house and raise a lot of chickens and ducks. Yippee-yi-oh-ki-yay. That's not a bad idea, but while you're doing all that, I'm going to make myself $1 million. How will you do that? I'm going to put my money in the bank and watch it grow. Well, I'm going to buy myself a great long railroad ticket and go to see Shirley Temple. I'm going to buy myself some clothes and come up and see me sometime, boys. Whoa! I'm going to go to Whitaker College and learn my ABC. And bring home A's instead of B's. And my mom and dad I please. If I had written every round. Wait till we catch the kidnappers before you start counting your money. Been looking 3 days and haven't found them yet. Oh, let's don't give up, gang. We may find them. That's the spirit, gang. Stay right with it. Oh!
Shut up, you brat. No one can hear you way out here.
You're just like dog this for this.
Can you imagine?
Listen, gang, what was that? Sound like someone screaming to me. It came from right over there. I bet that's her, gang. Come on, let's go see.
Oh.
It's her, gang. She's in there. Stay with me, Zeke. Stay with me. Stay here while we go get him. Come on, boys. Get him, gang. Off the jail. Daddy!
my baby safe at last. Gang, the police just phoned that you captured the kidnappers and deserve the reward.
And to show my appreciation, I'm going to have a big party tomorrow afternoon for the entire gang. Yay! Oh, gee, we're too late. We've already found her. Oh, we never hurry, look. Come on, maybe let's go up there. Maybe we can get some of that rod money. Maybe we'll be invited to the party anyway. Come on, let's go up there.
Come on in, gang. Let's go get the money.
What do you guys think of that one?
Yeah, I love it.
So Melton Barker was the director on that one. He was an itinerant filmmaker. He used a formulaic script, much like The Little Rascals, to make local kids stars. He often charged training and audition fees to make up his costs, but then after shooting the film for a few days, held a grand premiere in partnership with local cinema. In 1937, he filmed in Bentonville, Springdale, and Fayetteville, and the films were thought to have been lost, but they were discovered in Springdale during the renovations of the Apollo Theater. They made their way into the hands of a volunteer at the Library of Congress, whose name was Todd Turpinning. Todd then reached out to the Shiloh Museum to help identify some of the stills to see if we knew where the locations of the filming were. Bentonville film was originally misidentified as Rogers, but we soon sorted it out and realized there were 3 separate films and where they were located. For the next year and a half or 2, staff at the museum and Mr. Turpinning worked on identifying locations, and I was involved in that process. We used names printed in the newspaper, and I put on my Nancy Drew hat, and some of the others put on their Hardy Boy skills to track down the surviving children who survived in the film. Then we held a premiere of our own, and some of the children, now not so very young, sat on the stage and answered our questions. Barker supposedly came back to Northwest Arkansas in 1969, but so far we have not seen those films, so maybe when they renovate another theater, we'll find those films. You can actually check out our full production of this and the 3 films on our YouTube channel for Shiloh. You'll see a young Don Tyson as the MC for part of the talent portion, and he has this great thing that he does every time he exits the stage. So we actually identified the majority of the kids. It just took us a while. The Wonder Valley, I told you guys there was that film that was filmed here. So it was actually shot in 1951, released in 1953. This film starred Gloria Jean, Lance Devereaux, John Fontaine, Walter Kingsford, and even featured appearances by then Governor Sid McMath as himself. This film is believed to have been shot entirely in Arkansas, the first film to do so. Some of the places used for filming were the Hitch and Post Cafe on Emma Avenue, Lake Keith in Cave Springs. The film featured music by the Patricks, a local couple. I also promised you guys some juicy gossip. This is where that comes in, this film here. This film was very wholesome. It offered some of the juiciest gossip of all. The girl who played Sister was Myrna Lyles. She was plagued by scandals after the filming of this movie. Reading between the lines of newspapers and court reports, we see an overbearing mother who forced Myrna and her brother Gary into the spotlight and then into this film. Myrna would later lie about her age in order to marry at the age of 16. Her mother then called the police, the judge decided she must be pregnant to have lied about her age to get married, and so gave custody of her to her husband, while her 26-year-old ex-boyfriend protested by flinging himself down a flight of stairs headfirst. He wasn't badly injured. It was just more of a toddler tantrum. The mother was something, though. She had previously lost custody of the children, but was constantly creating a public scene over her kids. It was mostly to control their inheritance from their father, a construction tycoon from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Myrna eventually filed assault charges against her mother and the ex-boyfriend, and then poor Gary, her younger brother, eventually was institutionalized because the mother claimed he was incompetent in order to get control of. And so that's kind of where Gary spent the rest of his life. So for a wholesome film, there was a lot of nasty shenanigans going on in the background. Fighting Mad, has anybody seen this one? Yeah, the nasty shenanigans. This one was one of them. In 1976, this film was released and it starred Peter Fonda. The storyline, if known at the time, to the locals probably would have struck a chord because the main character is trying to save his family farm and his neighbors' farms from greedy developers. This film featured the Swinging Door Saloon on Dixon Street in Fayetteville, so across from the depot, right in front of Hammond Tree. Whatever that nightclub is now, that was the old Swinging Door Saloon, and led to some altercations with the police officer who played an extra in the film. Apparently, they punched him without telling him they were going to punch him for real. So assault on a police officer. Another filming location was the Ife Jones house in Bentonville. Newspapers, after the crew and stars left, reported that they were really glad to see them go. Even though there was serious financial gain for the communities, the rough crowd just wasn't worth the fiscal rewards in their opinion. Cy Sutherland said that practically everyone in Washington County has a blue and a gray story. Cal Kinser's story gives us the exact locations of filming and details of the filming. Everyone really hoped that this film would draw more of Hollywood into the Ozarks and Arkansas. They hired locals for the crews, and extras were often locals as well, which resulted in some really great shenanigans, and I have some of those here.
What year?
This would have been in the 1980s because we watched it in elementary school, and it had just come out like it was a big deal when I was in the second grade. We got some donations from this family who had some memorabilia from the filming of The Blue and the Gray. And we always ask for the backstory and like all those fun little details. And so when we got those, we got some great stories. So this lady who wrote back to our collections department said, "My then boyfriend, his brother, and I were all extras and on set a good bit. I find it funny that I can see them as soldiers on both sides in the exact same scene. One time we got excused late and there was a long line at the wardrobe room. So we just wore our clothes home, and the idea of getting there early in the next morning. On the way to set, I had a flat tire, so there we were on the side of the highway at 5 a.m., traffic zooming by with us in full garb while changing the tire. So imagine her in a hoop skirt and both of the guys dressed as soldiers. Glenn was in a general's uniform, and the big feather plume on his hat kept going crazy every time a vehicle went by. The Gettysburg Address was filmed at the Circle S Ranch in Goshen, and Gregory Peck was the one who delivered that speech. Apparently they brought him in on a helicopter just for that, and then they took him back out, so nobody had any time to actually meet him. There was a huge cavalry scene with cannons, and apparently they came upon a body. And so everything on the filming came to a screeching halt. Paramedics were called, police were called. Turns out the body had gone across the highway to the liquor store, filled his canteen with Old Granddad, the whiskey, to help fill the void, and went into a deep sleep, apparently because of the liquor and the heat. So there's some shenanigans from the Blue and the Gray. The local premiere was a success, but when the promotional materials went out for the national airings, locals were quite upset. Promo said that the movie was filmed on location with no mention of Arkansas, or more specifically, Northwest Arkansas, where filming had occurred, and also these people had invested their time, their money, and their lives to this process. They covered the streets of Fayetteville for filming. They filmed at the Capitol, the Arkansas Capitol. They were told by the production company that they had sent out the correct information, but they had no control over how the media outlets presented the information provided. So, if you get a chance, it's a long-winded story, but, and that opinion is colored by a 7-year-old's viewing of this film. When watching The Blue and the Gray, you can rest assured that it was not filmed on location at the big battlefields like Shiloh and Gettysburg, but actually here in Northwest Arkansas at Old Main, Goshen, Prairie Grove, and other places. So if you watch it, you can go back and see if you recognize any of the places. So they shut down the streets, they covered it in dirt, and Arkansas never received any of the credit on the national stage. So this one makes me giggle. I've actually watched this one on YouTube because it never made it to theaters. This movie was filmed largely in Eureka Springs. When you watch it, and I do recommend that you watch it in all of its B-movie glory, you'll recognize several places in Eureka Springs. It was filmed about 1987 and went straight to video. It starred Tim Curry, Annie Potts, and Bill Paxton. There's some pretty big names there. Some of the places featured in the film besides Eureka were Clifty and Green Forest. The store scene with the shootout early on in the movie is filmed at the Clifty store, and you can drive past it. It's still there today. And the newspaper article showed locals driving away in a hurry when they heard gunshots inside of the filming. So they didn't know what was going on. They just got out of there. They also built a fake facade on the front of the Eureka Springs Auditorium, and then they blew it up. On the 22nd of January, 1987, Eureka Springs residents and the local clergy, fearing that this film's connection with their community would get out, lodged a complaint with the production company. The Christ of the Ozark statue, they claimed, would make the location too recognizable, and the film was filled with greed, corruption, sex, drugs, racism, and violence, things they didn't want to be associated with. So some of the people wanted the film to actually be stopped altogether, and others just didn't want the town identifiable. The following day, the newspaper reported that the townspeople and the producers came to terms, and most of the scenes with the Christ of the Ozarks were cut. But if you are a local to Northwest Arkansas, you will recognize the places in the film. The film also brought on locals for the extras. The call for extras read, they wanted people who were structurally unique persons with large noses and bottoms. I don't know what they thought we looked like here in the hills of Arkansas, but there you go. The last film we'll discuss today is Staggerwing. This film was never completed and reveals the pitfalls of Hollywood in small towns. In 1987, everyone thought this movie was a go. Hal Holbrook was set to direct and the script was ready. Based on biographical work about Dallas Ray DeLay, a convicted murderer who was serving his sentence in Missouri, the boosters for the movie came to Fayetteville and Benton County, and they told local investors that the money for the film was in an escrow and would be available in August when they started filming. Locals could expect about $1.5 million to be put into their region from the production of the film. The film was never made, and local investors put up $400,000 for the production. The man responsible for the loss knew when he met with Arkansas investors that the oil company, who he said would be underwriting the film, never had any intention of doing so. In April of 1989, crews were ready to go to work, but no major backers offered up the cash necessary to hire a cast. One article speculated that they hoped Walmart and Tyson's would invest the remaining money, but they never did. And as of 1990, the $400,000 was not returned to Arkansas investors. In the last few years, you'll have seen Northwest Arkansas has seen an increase in interest from Hollywood, whether it's the hometown charm necessary for the faith-based film, the retro look of Middle America for the nostalgia pieces, Perhaps Gina Davis and Bentonville Film Festival have finally put Arkansas on the map for real. Some of the films are local crews, local production companies, and indie films, but others bring in big names like Martin Lawrence, Orlando Bloom, and the cast of HBO's True Detective. Whatever the case may be, I dare you not to look for familiar places and faces in the movies that you watch next. So, thank you very much. That is the end of my program. I'll take questions if you have any, but otherwise, thanks for hanging out with me. Yes, ma'am.
Did all the extras in the blue and the gray get paid?
No. Most of them were just volunteers that this was an opportunity to get their faces on screen. They thought it was cool. It was, you know, so.
Since you mentioned the state capital, I read recently that the reason they choose Arkansas so often as a replica is because it was just like the
Yes. Yeah.
Smaller. But
Yeah, smaller, yeah. And it was modeled after, at least that's what they told us when I was in 4th grade. Yeah. Anything else? Thank you, guys.
Thank you.